Recently, there has been plenty of controversy revolving around Activision Blizzard and their recent decision to punish a Hearthstone pro after he declared his support for the Hong Kong protests on Blizzard's livestream. My guess, though, is that Blizzard will not be the last company to make decisions with China's best interests in heart, due to the fact that one major Chinese company not only has stake in Blizzard, but in many of the largest gaming companies worldwide. My name is Ian Murphy, and today I will be walking you through the influence that Tencent has on gaming as a whole. If you've been paying attention to the news recently, you have most likely seen something about the mass protests that have been happening in the streets of Hong Kong. The largest protest has been cited at having 1.7 million protesters present, with Hong Kong only having a population of 7 million. In an attempt to very briefly explain why the protests are happening, here's a quick rundown. Hong Kong was actually considered a British colony until the year 1997. It was then that Hong Kong became a part of China once again, but under the condition that Hong Kong would remain semi-autonomous until the year 2047. The current problem is that protesters believe this formal agreement is already coming to a close, with a new bill that would allow the extradition of people from Hong Kong to be tried in mainland China, where punishments are often less fair and humane. Many fear that this bill will pass due to the heavily criticized democratic system that is currently exercised by Hong Kong's government. Although the majority of Hong Kong natives vote pro-democracy, their legislature is mostly comprised of pro-China officials due to business communities of Hong Kong having a say for 30 of the 70 seats in legislature. Additionally, Hong Kong's leader, their chief executive, must first be approved by China. These protests are obviously remarkably important, and it's not surprising that this political movement has influenced a variety of cultural spheres. For instance, the general manager of the NBA's Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, tweeted in support of the pro-democracy protests. In reaction, several Chinese businesses have since cut ties with the Houston Rockets, no longer producing or selling merchandise displaying the team's logo. Additionally, multiple games were not streamed in China as this whole dispute was settling. But what I am going to be talking about today is the effect that this has all had on the gaming sphere. The biggest story to come out involving gaming in the Hong Kong protests revolves around Blitzchung, a professional Hearthstone player from Hong Kong who, after winning the Asia Pacific Grandmasters tournament, used his interview to express his support for the pro-democracy protests. In the interview, Blitzchung shouted out what can be translated as "Liberate Hong Kong, the revolution of our age." In reaction to the interview, Activision Blizzard released a statement that the player would no longer receive the winnings for the tournament, on top of being suspended for a year. As you may expect, the internet did its thing and heavily criticized the company for its reaction. They then issued an apology stating that they would still give Blitzchung the winnings since he did not cheat in the tournament, and his suspension would be reduced from 1 year to 6 months. Yet this has not been enough to please the majority of their audience. BlizzCon, the company's annual gaming convention, takes place at the beginning of November, and all eyes are on the convention center as it is expected to be heavily protested. During the month of October, the company canceled a launch event for its Nintendo Switch port of Overwatch in wake of the Hong Kong controversy. So the question is, why are companies like Activision Blizzard and the NBA refraining from supporting the pro-democracy movement coming out of Hong Kong? Well, it's fairly obvious. Money. China is obviously a huge market, and Chinese companies have already shown a pattern of dropping support when a company criticizes the Chinese government. And in the gaming space, the most influential gaming company by far is Tencent Holdings Limited. Although Tencent's name may not be as recognizable as Blizzard's or Ubisoft's or Riot Games, the company actually owns parts of all of these companies. Let's break down exactly what Tencent owns. Most prominently, Tencent owns 100% of Riot Games, like as in all of it. Riot Games are the makers of the massively popular League of Legends, one of the two games constantly battling for the top spot for streams on Twitch, which actually brings us to their next venture. You've also probably heard of Fortnite, the other game battling out for the top game streaming on Twitch. Well, in 2012, Tencent took over 40% ownership of Epic Games, the developer behind the leading Battle Royale title. But it doesn't end there. not even in the Battle Royale space. Tencent are also the owners of 11.5% of Bluehole Games, the studio that brought us PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. For a very long time, this game was the only serious competitor to Fortnite, and Tencent has their hands in both of the pies. Additionally, Tencent owns 5% of Blizzard, the company previously mentioned for the Blitzchung controversy. To list off some others, they own 5% of Ubisoft, as well as 80% of the New Zealand native Grinding Gear Games, the creators of the also massively popular Path of Exile. It's safe to say that Tencent holds a modest amount of influence in the gaming space. And finally, I'm going to drop one more bombshell on you. The company that the NBA has the most to lose from? The company with the Chinese streaming rights to NBA games? Tencent. Yep, the very same company. Tencent has already made their stance on the matter clear with their refusal to stream NBA games throughout the preseason, as well as leading into the regular season. Only time will tell if their attitude will be seen and known in their other more gaming-centric ventures. The company is an absolute titan at this point, having passed Facebook in worth by the billions just last year. They do have their own social media app, WeChat, that has nearly 1 billion users. Yet, even with this, their name recognition seems to be very low here in the United States. So in the next few months, let us all watch these companies struggle as they attempt to throw the veil over these protests, because they all know that Big Brother Tencent is watching them very closely. If you want to learn more about the Hong Kong protests, check down in the description for links I have to various other news sites that describe the matter in more depth. Thank you so much for watching.